guys, Phil here at Woods Tree Farm. Today we're going to do an experiment with our cosmos. This is our first year growing cosmos, and these have been in bloom for about 3 weeks now. And we have constantly been trimming these back and deadheading the flowers and cutting off unproductive branches and cutting off overproductive branches and so on, with the goal to get these to continue to produce blooms for the next several weeks and into the early fall. So we actually need to be away from the farm for the next 2 weekends. We can come back out here 1 or 2 days during the week to do a little bit of maintenance, but each of the next 2 weekends we're not going to be able to open for you-pick flowers, and I wanted to do a little test to see how can these flowers, or how aggressive can these flowers be cut back. So right here, for this little stretch here, I cut back zinnias under the netting, and over here I'm going to cut back, did I say zinnias just a second ago? I did. Cut back these cosmos under the netting, and I'm going to cut back these cosmos just above the netting, and we'll see how these plants respond over the next 2 weeks to this aggressive cutting. And the rest of the patch I'm just going to continue to selectively cut here and there like I've done, because obviously I don't want to destroy the patch. But we have plenty of flowers, and I can experiment here with this little 10 or 15 foot section, and maybe we'll learn something. So follow along. Yeah, so that first section, I left about 12 inches of plant just by cutting it just under the netting. So I'll do another little section here, just kind of even off my row. And I pull all these out and leave them. Pull all these out. Okay, they're good to go. And now from here down to the next 5 feet or so, I'm going to cut these just above the netting, which means it's going to be at least about 6 inches taller than the other stuff that I just cut. So I'm filming this on Monday, August 2nd. We'll come back next week and see what these look like, these two little test sections here. I really don't know what to expect, and I haven't seen any other videos on YouTube that do this kind of experiment. I've seen plenty kind of flower growers show how to cut them back, and you usually go back at least to like the second branch and cut them back that way on a selective kind of basis, but I've never really seen anybody just come in and clear them out. You might have noticed I've got this trellis netting here. The trellis netting has worked really, really well. You can see the plants grow up through it. And down there, you can hardly even see the netting because the plants have grown up through it and just covered it up. So when we first put this netting down, I thought it was kind of an eyesore. And it was also a bit of work. And I did not have enough stakes cut to do the rest of it. And I just got on other things. And I had a couple people tell me, oh, you don't need to net those. They'll be fine. But I will say this one thing. The one row that is trellised, or has the netting up, the plants have grown up through that netting for the most part. There's only a couple stragglers that went outside of it, and that row is very clean looking. The other rows, as the plants have gotten bigger, there are plenty of plants that are falling over or just drooping over into the aisleway, and it's making a couple little sections of this difficult to navigate. So for a cut your own farm like what we're trying to do, I think in the future if we do the trellising, it's going to make this a lot nicer. So anyway, I'm going to come back to you guys here in we'll maybe do 1 week, and maybe we'll do a following week after that if we need to, and we'll see what these look like. And we are back. It's been over a week since we cut back these cosmos, and I have a couple key observations that I'm really liking. One, this section here was a section that we cut below this netting, so it's cut down about 12 inches. It seems to be a little shocked, though it is shooting off some new growth. Very little new growth has emerged above the height of the netting, and very few flowers, if any. There's one on this one here, and that's it. Now the next section was a section that I cut even with the netting, so it was about 14 to 18 inches tall, and it has shot off lots of new branches and lots of new flower heads. So I think this is a really good test. I think if we cut it down that aggressive, those plants are a little shocked. I mean, they might come back, give it another week or two, but they seem to be a little slow going, where these just took off with where they were cut. And sent off a lot of new flowers. So I'm going to do some more cutting like this in a couple other areas, because our big flower event is still about a week and a half away, and I want to have lots of fresh new flowers for those folks. We're still selectively cutting over some of this here and just cutting back a branch here and a branch there when the flowers are approaching maturity. But some of this, I think we can just do a nice level cut, and then in about 10 days from now, we'll have lots of blooms on those fresh cuts. As a final wrap up for this little Cosmos test, we're now over 3 weeks later. It is the end of August now, almost September. And I wanted to show you, I'm in the same spot here where I chopped off the end of this row here. This section here where you see these blooms, that was the section that was cut down to about 12 inches, well below that trellis netting. And it has come back. It's a little thin, but there's plenty of blooms there, and there's plenty of flower heads that are still developing. So that looks okay, but not as robust as the section right next to it that was cut down to about 18 inches or just above the trellis netting. It took a couple weeks, but that has really bounced back to look much like the rest of the patch that did not get cut back as aggressively. So I think in the future, if I'm concerned about my blooms setting too early, I'm not going to hesitate at all to come in here and cut these things off maybe about knee high, a little over knee high, just using head shears, chopping them back, because it looks very prolific when it comes back. All of this here was cut back to about 18 inches, and like I said, it pretty much looks just like everything else. Everything else is a little taller, and everything else, the flowers are also more mature. There's a lot more completely dead heads and the rest of this. So that finalizes this little Cosmos test. Hope you guys found this information useful and helps you guys in your gardens or your flower patches. And make sure you check out my next video, which is actually going to be a wrap up and a recap of our Flower Fest and our flower season. So we actually did a couple U-pick cutting weekends and individual days, and then we did a big weekend that we advertised heavily, and we did something called Flower Fest. Well, anyway, I'm going to share with you how all that worked and what we learned along the way and what I think we're going to do differently next year so that our flower events can get even better year after year. So thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.